fact that they're winning the game. It's how they ended up in that case doesn't add up to what it should. And whenever that doesn't exist, that's really scary.
Well, Tiger JK did tweet and say he felt really good about this match. I think it was last night or this morning.
He's looking real good.
Yeah, everyone looking very good. They got the early lead. That was something that worked for them well versus even in depth to get an early lead and just continue that into a quick victory while they maintain all of the advantages that they have with that lead. But that is not a game plan that worked out for them versus Tempo Storm. And because of that, I thought probably that this match would go a lot of the ways that we saw versus Tempo Storm, which is a 3-1. Spacestation were able to get a good Toronto composition that got one game win, but otherwise Tempo Storm were the dominant team. But in this case, winning the first game for Spacestation in this best of 5 bodes pretty well for them now in the rest of the series.
It does bode for them very, very well. And now it's like, well, how much do we see out of Gale Force eSports? Was that one game? Because you flat out opened before we saw anything. How long do you go? I said one game is as far as I would be willing to risk it. Suddenly it's the very first game. That's enough for me to go, wait a minute. We weren't warmed up, right? Like there's a lot of easy scapegoats when you're Gale Force eSports in this situation. So immediately, I'm like, I'm not sold. We'll see too much from them, but maybe they'll need to because that last game was anything but what they had planned out.
And it's not just Team Freedom this weekend, but Roll20 next weekend, although granted, we'll be on a different patch. The meta will be all sorts of different, but let's see where Game 2 is going to take place. It happens to be Braxis Holdout, and in losing that last game, Gale Force is the one who chooses it.
Gale Force eSports willing to choose the map over going for the first pick. It's no surprise where they're taking us. It just, again, this has been a recent adjustment for North America to not always go with the first pick or die strategy and be willing to, you know, pick and choose your battles conveniently on the battlefield. You know, I didn't think my wording through before I ended up throwing that one out there. But Braxis Holdout for Gale Force. It's going to be a scary game here for Spacestation Gaming. I said that in the last one. Look how it went. So who knows? I'm willing to say I don't think there will be a Sylvanas. And if so, I sure hope that it's at least played differently.
I would agree with that, but Spacestation is a team who knows the style of Gale Force. I mean, at this point, everybody knows the style of Gale Force because they've all started adopting it for Braxis Holdout, but Gale Force are still the kings of it. Though granted, Equinox and spending time on Gale Force eSports in the time when Gale Force was developing this strategy has implemented it with his team as well, and to pretty good success. They've gotten some good wins on Braxis Holdout, so I think that Gale Force can't just expect to come in here and have an opponent who won't be rotating in the same way that they will be.
Yeah, and that kind of pulls back to that same thing. It's just about the mentality of Gale Force eSports here. How much respect suddenly are you willing to kind of shove over to the members of Spacestation Gaming when it comes to not only draft, but then that of strategy, how much you're willing to show of your own you know, personal take onto the meta and well. There's a lot of different things here, and I think it's really cool to see Gale Force have to answer those. You know, I know that they feel very different because when you're in their shoes, the easier your day is going, usually the better. But for everybody at home, we get to learn a lot more about the North American perspective whenever we have days like this.
Absolutely. It's so good to be back at HGC once again, especially every weekend getting closer and closer to playoffs, closer and closer to figuring out who will represent our region in those top 2 spots and who will have to fight tooth and nail to get the 3rd spot representing North America. But here we go. Game number 2 in Spacestation with a 1-game lead so far in this best of 5 series. And they'll have first pick and first ban.
Who has to ban the Medivh? Does Medivh even need the ban here is the first thing that comes to my mind.
Dread Astral Projection, hello? Portal on one, portal on the other beacon. You're just jumping back and forth. It's the ultimate backdoor.
Everybody, you know, controls the shrines with that kind of strategy. It is a really good one, and it is a really cool one. Honestly, I would be willing to say it even has a place. It's just the amount of time, effort, and risk that takes to bust out that type of strategy and learn it is very niche. That's like a world championship strategy, but I respect where you're headed there. Medivh, he made it through. Who's willing to pick it up? If so, where are they willing to pick it up? I would assume it's going to be after the secondary ban phase or in the 2-3 for Spacestation if we see it before the secondary ban. But he has, again, been such a slow and heavy climb in North America. Also, what is another common first pick here for Spacestation? What can we assume with the Tacit Argon?
Haven't seen Spacestation play on Braxis yet this part, but they got the Muradin.
They're willing to take away the core of the strategy.
So important.
They said, we don't care about the meta, we're just going to take away this one core aspect of that strategy. The two heroes that in fact can backdoor the shrines with the map manipulation that GFE aspires to have so frequently on Braxis, Murden, and Genji. And conveniently, Spacestation Gaming put an X on top of one and a check mark next to the other.
Genji was gone. Now Greymane, Anubarak, Arthas, these are still some Braxis picks that we've seen from Gale Force before, but there's also a possibility of Chromie somewhere potentially. A lot of teams have been enjoying running her on all sorts of different battlegrounds, but because of her ability to stall out, hold on to a lane no matter how hard teams are pushing with it. I also want to know, because we're getting the Morales change next weekend, if we're going to get a Morales from Gale Force at any point this weekend. Before the change comes in, it'll be a whole new Morales, a whole new you.
A whole new Akaface, you know?
Right.
Being the most consistent Morales in North America. It would be nice, you know, as like as a farewell to the old of Lieutenant Morales, but I don't know if we're gonna get that from them. Sadly, we do know we're gonna get a Greymane and a Dahaka though, being their 1-2 for Gale Force eSports. It is a little surprising to see them high pick into the Dahaka for me just when the Murden's taken by Spacestation. This is only interesting considering the matchup and why these heroes were picked in the order that they were. It suddenly makes it to where Dahaka confirms a 1-4 mentality for Gale Force eSports, which doesn't play into their strengths and approach to a map like Braxis. So it's kind of showing, you know, the attempt to break Gale Force is slightly worked with the first ban and pick of Spacestation Gaming.
That's true, but didn't Gale Force also one time run a 2-3 and have a double global with Dahaka in the top?
You are correct.
I wonder if they'll still do something like that then and not do what we would assume with the Murden strat instead.
They were willing to run it and run that more 2-3 older style of a kind of laning situation. It just wasn't nearly as dominant. It's like,
that's true.
I refuse to call that like a Braxis Gale Force strat. It's like, congratulations, you have a laning situation on a map in Heroes of the Storm. You know, it just didn't have that flavor to be of their own strategy. I
am loving seeing Malthael picked up for Spacestation Gaming. I do feel like of the off-laners, Spacestation is more limited than Gale Force. Spacestation doesn't really play Illidan, and Gale Force has still been willing to play Illidan. They both play a lot of Dahaka. Falstad is still a possibility for both teams, but Malthael seems to be the most recent adjustment for Spacestation, starting to pick him up more, and making sure that they get him, they make sure that wherever Dahaka is, Malthael can also be there as a dominant force against him in the lane. Leaming bans, a new Barak ban immediately after that.
So what do we see for Gale Force eSports here post-secondary ban phase? There again, it kind of plays into a bit of, do they want to run a 2-3 laning situation? And more importantly, where the heck is Chromie? She's gone way too far down this rabbit hole to not be picked up, considering how high a priority laning has been, how high Chromie's risen in power. And this is the first map that like Chromie was a thing. And she has made it all the way through the secondary ban phase, maybe even to the last couple of picks. She's like the short kid on the kickball team.
Are you saying that because she's a gnome? Because that's rude. As a short person, I take offense for her.
Yeah, you are. You are short enough to be like, I can take, you know, offense for the short people. You know,
Thanks
I'm
for
sorry.
the permission.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, but you are. You know, it's
That's
sadly
true.
Nobody knows that you stand on a secret invisible box and makes you tall.
Now they do.
Illusions, wizardry on this side of the camera.
Ooh, wow! A little camera magic for you guys.
Guys, want to watch us disappear? Yeah, I know it's season finale. We haven't busted this one. Okay, ready?
Do it.
Top secret. We don't know how to disappear. I'm sorry.
Someday.
One
We're
day.
still working on it.
Just
gotta iron out all the kinks. Final two picks now. We didn't even talk about ETC Falstad. Potential for 3 globals, but at the very least, they are doing the Dahaka Falstad
yeah,
thing.
that's the biggest thing, is it plays into the 2-3 that you were talking about. Falstad Dahaka going to be laning, now making the Chrome even more, you know, appealing, but I'm afraid to say her name.
Ooh, ooh. She's here somewhere. That's all that matters. It's not Akaface, but I'll take it. And Gul'dan, that's powerful.
It sure is, Gilly. It is powerful. Double support, Rhaegar Morales. Then it's a double mage-ish 2-1-2 from Spacestation Gaming. Meanwhile, we've got the 2-3 from Gale Force in terms of their laning situation. Where are we going, Akaface? What are you going to, you know, grace our presence here in this game. We've already got the Morales and Rhaegar gone. Is it going to be the Uther for the holy cow? It's going to be the Uther.
I think Akaface was mad that his Morales got taken. Nah, I think Uther fits better with this here. We'd maybe see Morales if they were to pick something like the Chromie or like a Gul'dan there. I like it too. Is that what you're going to say?
No.
You like Spacestation? I like it. The only thing that is kind of weird is Malthael Gul'dan, who's going to make sure to confirm kills.
Yeah, so that is a problem on the side of Spacestation Gaming. I was actually more considering, I just found it weird because I was just going to, sometimes I say things and I mean it, but then I realize, like, I kind of don't even, it seems weird hearing myself say that out loud, which was, I don't like Uther here. It just doesn't seem to make sense in this type of situation. As the last pick, you know everything picked up. You're into a double support. Who's going to confirm the kills? Your problem as Gale Force eSports is not how do I keep it's just avoiding the dots. I would have liked to see something like a Malfurion. I think it would have accented the map a little bit better. I think it would have accented the damage a little bit more. And more importantly, I mean, Twilight Dream is really useful, and Malfurion can sustain with these healers a little bit better than the Uther.
I'm wondering if this gives a hint towards something different with the Uther, like maybe a Divine Storm, try to capture Malthael if he tries to jump into a fight. Yeah, my first thought was, well, like when I see the Uther, I say, okay, there's a lot of emphasis on either making sure Greymane is going to be a huge problem or it's going to be a mosh pit problem. So if it's one of those two, which one makes the most sense? Greymane flank, or I think the mosh, it stands out a little bit more than the Divine Storm, but if they go into the Divine Storm, I think it would at least make a better argument for it than not going into the Malfurion, because, again, there is no burst. There are no major hard crowd controls that you're overly concerned about that you need that Uther pick for. There's so many ways of being able to interrupt Mosh, though, so maybe that was a problem enough that they felt like they just needed the Divine Storm, because, I mean, you've got Storm Bolts, you have Horrify, and then you have Grenade or Cleanses out from Lieutenant Morales. So far, Space Station's up 1 game in the Best of 5 over Gale Force eSports at the top of the charts. Let's see if they can make it a 2-0 as we head into Game 2 on Braxis Holdout.
What a tale that would be to say after this game. Space Station Gaming, not only are they up over the #1 seed in North America, 2-0, but they just beat them on their best map, like Braxis Holdout. What a legend that would be here, that Space Station Gaming is currently writing. That would be legendary, but they'll have to do it versus a style of composition that Gale Force has been running maybe since the beginning of time, and that is a mass global strategy. They've got Prog Rock, that'll help with the dots that you were talking about now, ETC trying to provide some of that extra healing along with Uther when his cooldowns are down. And then they've got the self-sustain of Dahaka, potentially Falstad. There's some things that he can pick too, like hammer gains. Falstad is going to be transitioning up towards top as the solo for that 1-3-1 that Gale Force is going to be running. You have the Uther and the ETC, so like Malfurion would have been, and what I was going to say as a follow-up for ETC, you've got the stun still from Uther to follow up, and then Greymane for damage. Here comes the first attempt. Shouldn't really lead to anything as long as the healing, oh wow! Body blocked! Is it going to be there? It didn't even matter. The members of Gale Force find the first blood. After a great flank there up on bottom. I was just going to talk about the laning situation and decision-making for Gale Force to go with the 1-3-1. And I was going to talk about when you run a 1-3-1, we've seen a few teams be willing to pick up this strategy in North America, and your kill potential is just poor between your 3-man, the ETC, the Greymane, and the Uther, which it's decent, but it doesn't feel as one-shot, or at least you don't see those 3 and go, that is dead 100% of the time, especially with the double support existing on the other side. But with the rotations that they're making, even being willing to go through here and block out the globe, it looks like Gale Force has too big of an upper hand, as you see Trees having a general idea that something fishy's going on. Uh-oh. This time he makes it back a lot further. Safeguards there, though. Drag comes in after, and then the beautiful face mount holding on to that mine. Goodness. Gale Force looked so clean in that, getting a second kill on Gul'dan as he was coming back. The only way Space Station Gaming is going to be able to run this 2-1-2 laning situation, and Gale Force is going to have to stop what they've managed to make happen here, is if either one, you ask unrealistically next level plays from Tiger JK, and specifically with his grenade timings, or two, you really just can't. You got to stop this. You need to be able to stop Gale Force from doing what they're doing right now. They've already made the front wall happen up on top. Yes, there has been, or on bottom. Yes, there was a bit of punishment from Spacestation towards top, but this is what what Gale Force does on a map like Braxis, is the small victories. They build them up over time, and then suddenly you find yourself down 100-0 and a 10 talent here.
Change up of Crowd Surfer, and we may see it here from King Caffeine. He was watching to see if he needed to bail Akaface out of trouble. The beacons have begun. Gale Force using their Greymane, their Merking hero, to make sure that they can get an early camp up in the top lane as they start to rotate their kill comp up to here. They realize that Spacestation have started to push out this top lane fairly heavily with the 2 people, unchecked and only up against the Falstad. So now they're going to hold on to both the beacons just enough to start to get up in the progress, and this is what Gale Force does the best. Holding on and just getting those little bits of percentages here and there until all of a sudden you're against a 100% Zerg rush and you're in trouble.
They are going to be trying to avoid that trouble. We saw on bottom again the nade being used from Tiger JK. I know I pointed it out twice this game, but it is crucial that if you're going to be going into a risky Lieutenant Morales composition, hold on a minute here. They found the secondary support, Jason, and with King Caffeine's body blocks once more, securing the 3rd kill here for Gale Force eSports. And it's going to be up to him, Tiger JK there on that Morales, saving that grenade to make sure that one of those targets can survive. Because right now, Gale Force is on just, honestly, they don't look like they have any respect, and more importantly, it doesn't look like Space Station's going to be asking any from them.
Here comes a collapse. A lot of Gale Force dedicated to this. This might be a chance for Space Station to at least get on the beacon somewhere, but they're also getting a mercenary camp. So behind this, Gale Force is climbing up even more, and the beacons, Equinox is slowing them down. People start to peel away as they want to make sure that they're still holding on to the beacons and not letting Equinox and the rest of his team get an advantage out of this chase.
But Space Station Gaming is now losing Equinox in one aspect. They're losing a little bit of the shrines, and then they lost the Mouth Ale. This is a case where you're losing at every angle of the map, and there's small losses which are now going to be staggered, one after the other, and now maybe a 3rd here onto Jason, at least enough to zone out. Suddenly you see concentration and focus for Gale Force onto those shrines, and that is where these beacons are going to essentially build up that Zerg rush to the point where Gale Force just has too much to deal with. Space Station, they did end up holding on with those staggered deaths there a little bit longer than I assumed they would be able to do so, but look at the experience. That is really what we're fearful of here.
Yeah, the problem for a team slowing down Gale Force when they get into this situation is that it only enables them to potentially have heroics along with the first Zerg rush. So it's like, yes, you're stalling out, but you're still falling further behind, so unless you can make sure to catch up with that, or just deal with the Zerg rush earlier on, but then you do that and you basically give Gale Force heroic abilities and that massive experience jump. It's a rough spot to be in with no clear good answer. The position that Space Station now find themselves in, and so many teams find themselves in versus Gale Force on this map.
The only answer you can really come up with that is a clear, like, at least it's going to be slightly, not even really, even there would be only slightly better, would be just give it up. This is one of the few objectives in the game. When your opponent starts capping it, they can't stop, right? Think about it. They get a Dragonite and they start sieging up. If they ever wanted to just be like, we'll stop paying attention to pressure here, or we're working around a time window and experience advantage elsewhere. Once that number starts ticking up, it is on Space Station to be the ones who says, stop this. We don't want to be delaying this. So really, it's your own fault to a certain extent if you find yourself in that situation. And right now, it's looking like Gale Force eSports has prepped the map to be able to do that with a half-level lead. It's not as drastic as I expected it to be, but Space Station also has a pretty safe laning composition with their 2-on-2. So much so that it lacks, honestly, quite heavily when it comes to team fighting, or I expect it to do so. It's just whether or not that Uther pickup is too risky and those lack of sustain for those major team fights.
Equinox has safeguard, so he has the extra armor from that, and now he's getting healed back up. Stepping back in with the Stormbolt. Mike is just waiting to find Trees or Lieutenant Morales on the other side of this. It's so scary for Trees and Tiger JK to move forward with Equinox, but Tiger JK is almost completely drained of mana. Finally, as Gale Force get close to heroic abilities, they'll push Space Station back off of this bottom beacon.
They will be able to push them off, and again, it's all about that 10. It's just, when do you let it go through? Cleanse being forced there on bottom from Tiger. I'm going to be completely honest here. We have 2 cleanse this game, so I'm not going to be able to tell you who cleansed what. But I sat there and I was like, was that Tiger or was that the Rhaegar? I was like, okay, Rhaegar's not here. We're fine. But the 10s are here. Gale Force has got everything according to plan. The only difference is 10% exists for the Zerg Rush of Spacestation Gaming. And they will be in a situation where they will be able to pick up heroics for themselves, even dangling this pressure down below towards bottom as they mirror the rotations of GFE. Collusion sending the energy there.
Spacestation, take my energy. Collusion, the support player for Team Freedom, cheering on his friends from Spacestation. Maybe just wanting to make sure that he has a better odds for her. Here comes the stock.
No, nothing happened yet.
That was Haymaker. Haymaker happened.
Haymaker, in fact, did happen, Gilly. Good call on that one. There's one of 2 cleanses there, dropped onto Casanova. Members of Spacestation Gaming flexing around this beacon. Falstad's consuming the bottom one. The dance of Braxis holdout continues. No flight attempted from Falstad.
Spacestation made it to Heroics, though, and Gale Force did not get the jump in power that comes with Heroics and a 100% Zerg Rush. Now Equinox transitions down to the bottom beacon. They're going to bring Morales and Gul'dan there too. That prompts Gale Force to step back in on top, and fans even to fly in, but Casanova and Jason have already backed out.
So that was now the first time we've actually seen Gale Force try and abuse the Falstad flight to be able to get a kill, and it was because the failure, hold on here, fight's about to unfold as the drag, the power slide, and Murden is down. No avatar to keep him alive, and he's dead. Casanova gets that Tormented Souls, moves right on in, and he's doing a lot of work. That's 1 versus 4, holding his own. He gets an Ancestral, but the mosh pit is money. Divine Shield afterwards. Gale Force turning it back around.
Legendary turn for Gale Force eSports. Even after the Tormented Souls, the Reaper's Mark was still on Uther, so he will go down, but Rhaegar was caught. 2 kills for the 1 of Gale Force eSports. Gale Force now with a man advantage should be able to finally finish out this beacon phase.
Power slide over the wall, and now King Caffeine will complete this phase. And I was going to talk about the initiation attempts between those double globals of Gale Force eSports. Between, you have, you know, the Dahaka came in round number 1, got the drag, it failed. Number 2, Falstad flies, unable to make it happen. Ends up being a poor fight for Gale Force eSports again. Spacestation needs to stop waiting for the next fight, because between the 2 globals, there is never that fight where you go, well, what if their global isn't sitting doing what globals are supposed to be doing? And then what if they, you know, they're going to initiate. This is what Gale Force legitimately built their brand off of, is global strategies. They are better than everyone else at it, and they will be able to out-rotate you. So try and clump, try and take that fight. Right now, the clumping is on Equinox. He used that Haymaker just to knock Mike back into that keep front wall. But the members of Gale Force eSports here, after getting that forward, they're pretty far forward. Yeah,
Spacestation are trying to collapse because of that positioning. But Equinox was only able to land a Storm Bolt, and otherwise the rest could leave. Fans still had Gust, so even if they got into extreme trouble from Spacestation, they could still disengage from that. And I have to say, Gale Force, the way that they used Gust to isolate Malthael when he went in with Tormented Souls, and then immediately followed up with what we hypothesized, the Mosh Pit and Divine Shield, just to make sure that there was not ways of being able to stop that Mosh Pit. That allowed Gale Force to get that big win in the fight. And finally, the Beacon phase. That means the first fort is down, but it's not too much structural of a difference for Spacestation. The main thing is that they need to catch up to 13, so they have the opportunities to get back into the fight.
The one thing I am concerned for, though, is just how the team fights have to play out for Spacestation Gaming. I mean, we haven't really gotten to talk about the strategic advantage, disadvantage of having a Haymaker. Yeah, it can be a displacement, and we know it can get the cool kills. I can knock my opponent over the wall, and they can die. It can be like a pseudo Stitches hook, but the lack of Avatar changes all of Muradin. There's a reason that Heroic is pretty much the go-to, other than, honestly, amazing world-class level Korean players playing Muradin.
And he has to dive very far deep, usually and often with his Dwarf Toss, which then means he's just in there, doesn't have a Dwarf Toss. And who is a support that does not want to come in and chase after you? That would be Lieutenant Morales.
Well, at least you'll have your Rhaegar behind you, but that means that Rhaegar has got to be the one saving the Muradin. Now who's going to save my Tormented Soul Malthael? He has got to be self-sufficient or within range of the Morales. It's just suddenly those two are both demanding resources from the double support, and without anybody to really get up there and lock down those kills, it's concerning on the survivability of Equinox. Also, beyond the fact that we haven't even talked about the fact that we see the still solo backline, mainly the double warrior, the lockdown and split and pressure that they've been able to put onto Equinox. He is often on his own island doing his own thing, and that's not to a fault. That is what they need to a certain extent with these strategies. But maybe not if you have Haymaker.
There's not even a cursed bullet, and still Gale Force are being able to do a ton of damage to Murden or take him out.
Murden's surprisingly squishy because a lot of people fail to appreciate a lot of his max percentile health talents that you take actually work with Avatar.
Yep, and this is the product of that. He gets the armor from Dwarf Tossing, but doesn't have anybody else. Haymaker's in, trying to buy time, but finally Michael Udall rotates in with a drag. This is another time where Spacestation have used Murden dying to get something out of it, but that is a strategy that can only take you so far in a game, because the longer the game goes, the longer the respawn timers hit.
Now, you know, Gilly, I'm glad you bring that up because you are correct. That does seem to be a bit of the direction Space Station Gaming is going, but more importantly, we're right at about that threshold. 13 is when I start considering death timers big enough to where I get like really big advantages, like game-winning leads over my opponent if you end up making those mistakes. Right now, yes, it is on even footing, but if Space Station is going to sacrifice their noble Murden, their noble Equinox, more frequently in the future.
Fan has been juking and jiving for about a hot minute. There's a Divine Shield. Gets one heal out of that. Great stun.
He lives.
Barrel
No,
roll.
he doesn't have
They
a mark.
use Tormented.
He doesn't have a mark. If he can dodge it, he has to dodge this E. He
They're
has to.
trying to get Tailwind going.
That's it.
He's got Tailwind going.
Down,
Jason.
left, right.
Jason.
Oh my.
Jason.
Barrel. He's a god. Flight. No way. Fan. Saving Private Fan has failed. Gale Force is down.
But talk about using your death to get an advantage. We saw Equinox doing that. That merry chase down just about all of Brax's holdout gave Gale Force eSports a full Zerg rush. There was already keep damage being done thanks to the double global and pushing that lane. So they'll take out a keep.
Haymaker's used, but this keep is going to go down, and so maybe not the place Equinox wants to be at this point in time. They find themselves Akaphase actually getting displaced far enough out, so he will end up going down. Not Divine Shield. The Uther falls, 16 Talenteers here. Bottom, Zerg Rush still pushing away. And they're going to be able to probably get this bottom fort. Those Guardians usually are a bit stubborn.
Yeah, there's a Hydralisk there too. Fort down, and only one keep left for Space Station. They're still only a level behind of Gale Force. But the problem for that has still been being that far behind. Get to 16, maybe. They still have to deal with the top, but man, now they're dealing with a double global and having a keep down.
This is one of those games where Space Station Gaming can look at and be like, we are 15 minutes into it, and we aren't that far behind our opponents. Hold up. We're going to get a boss started. Mike Udall's focus, as you see him getting the flank around there. When boss control, Horrify is the best thing. Mike Udall's full focus. The members of Space Station want to get themselves the dino, but the barrel roll and Gus is enough. Boss is going to be reset. Not completely, it doesn't look like. That was reset number 1.
Sands 16, Space Station moved back in on the boss. They recognize that they're in a tough situation in this game now. There's the power slide, Mosh Pit. Hand of Protection, but it didn't stop it in time. Now Casanova moves forward. He's got Tormented Souls.
The Horrify
behind it.
It's huge, and they get one and a second kill after. The boss goes down. Space Station claim that one for themselves, and Fan is the focus. The heals coming out from Akaphase are too little, too late. Space Station Gaming may at least turn this game around.
So King Caffeine going in, but immediately getting stunned just before Hand of Protection can continue out with that. We talked about Divine Shield, but maybe seeming like there were so many people in the area that only the cleanse was necessary. But that was titanic for Equinox to be able to stop that because of the positioning, because of the choke, and the way that Gale Force were wanting to use that. After that, getting the 3 kills, Space Station have to get a ton done in this amount of time. They've already caught up in experience. They're at 16. There's the Reaper's mark.
He's got disengage, out of range for Casanova, drag land. So he's going to survive.
Oh, Equinox may not. Doesn't have
Cleanse.
Haymaker.
He doesn't have any mana. That's the biggest thing, is the fact that he has no way out of this. Talking trees, he gets flash, barrel roll, W. Gus is going to split the members of Space Station. Gale Force eSports wants this fight. Casanova is going to go ahead and teleport away. Power Slide lands. Tiger JK gets in his medevac. He's going to get out of that thing too.
They're turning this. Look at Casanova. He doesn't even have
That
Tormented.
mosh pit, he's just dancing alone by himself in a corner there. And now when we see King Caffeine go down, the siege up on bottom, Gilly.
Are they about to turn this game around, Dread?
Are they about to pull ahead and take a 2-0 lead on the series? It's looking like it.
They already have a level lead. They've got beacons that they can start right now. Gale Force have 23 seconds until they can get ETC back in. And even then, there's no mosh pit for 80 seconds.
Space Station Gaming, this is it. We haven't thought about it. What if we just play on a outer space map? Like,
this is the second time you phrase something as about to be just truly game-changing in terms of Heroes of the Storm analysis, and then it is useless to us.
just doing my job here, ladies and gentlemen. I think it was useful because we now know that Space Station Gaming just looks on a completely another level whenever they get to play at home turf.
New strategy. There you go. What do we have? Space Station somehow won that fight without Horrify and without Tormented Souls. And that means they still have those, both of those, with the Zerg Rush as they approach the keep of Gale Force eSports. Gale Force still 30 seconds without a mosh pit.
30 seconds without a mosh pit. Not even to talk about the lack of anti-synergy throughout this entire game. The coordination we've seen Space Station Gaming display with those heroics, but the Zerg Rush has made its way to the core. Stormbolt lands. Cleanse has been forced. No Haymaker available. Mike's the focus. Adaptation doesn't go off. He ends up going down.
He dies. He dies as he was trying to drag it in.
Divine Shield
used on top of it.
This is game.
Gust throws back a lot of the members, but there's still Zerg and all of Space Station on the core as it continues to fall. Now Horrify allows the members of Space Station to just push back Gale Force again. We're at 30%. Space Station's about to go up 2 games over Gale Force eSports. What?
Gale Force eSports has got to be sitting there and just going, what went wrong? Thinking emoji. Still got nothing. I mean, I've got a couple of things, but the biggest thing here is I just want to highlight the fact that game number 1, I was like, well, the Sylph, it's a little weird. You know, they failed to play to their strengths. This game, there are no excuses on the side of Gale Force eSports. This is just flat Space Station Gaming doing what they needed to do. I mean, there was a couple of mistakes here and there on the side of Gale Force, but that's called being human. The game number 1, that was not the case. It was a very, like, what is happening here? This was Space Station Gaming really bringing it to Gale Force eSports. And now, if Gale Force wants to win, that's got to be a reverse sweep.
Yeah.
That is ridiculous.
Maybe Gale Force came into this series fully just planning on Team Freedom. Maybe they discounted Space Station. They had already beaten them last time. But now they've got to go back to the drawing board in the little bit of time that they're going to have here. We're going to a break, and when we come back, it's do or die for Gale Force.